Welcome to the High Ground. I'm James Rosile, joined with
Din.
Din. Welcome to our channel once again. Last time you were here, you were promoting Rebel Girl, which was a long, long time ago. It was before we saw a little movie called The Last Jedi.
Yeah, I think it was the summer. So that was the pre-release single.
Yeah, and so you're going to be updating the music video for it to include a couple new characters.
Yeah, I absolutely love Rose. I got to get her in the video, and I really love Haldo's character as well. So
do you understand the hate? Sorry, do you understand the hate that these two characters are getting? Does it like dumbfound you, or do you kind of understand both sides of that?
It doesn't dumbfound me because I understand that all hate comes from fear. So there's something people fear by seeing more women and more diversity, obviously, in some quarters of fandom. So that's to be expected. But we need these movies to start conditioning people to change them. I mean, you know, kids that grow up watching a diverse cast like this, they're not going to grow up with the same issues some people have now. So that's how global myth changes people.
Exactly. For me personally, I liked Rose. I wasn't, head over heels with Rose. I really loved Holdo, though. I thought Holdo was a great character. I would like to see Rose in more Star Wars. I think she said that she doesn't know if she's a 9 or not. I hope they continue her character on because I'd like to see more. And she's a character I see growing on everybody.
Yeah, she has a lot of heart. She seems to be the Sam Gamgee of the movie. You know,
I like that.
She almost evokes Sam in her approach in the way that that speech in the Two Towers where Frodo asks what are they fighting for, and he's like, he mentioned he has that whole soliloquy, and then Rose has like a little soliloquy too with Finn that's like that. The whole we're fighting for those we love, not what we hate. Yeah,
that's on.
She's the real hero in a way.
She kind of is. We'll get into a lot of this going on, but right now the title of this show is called #NotMyLuke, which I'm sure you've seen all over the place. I've seen it all over the place. I know you have feelings on it. You, though, wrote I guess I call it an essay on all of it as a whole, basically, and you firmly believe that #NotMyLuke is not accurate at all, that this is your Luke, and this is the Luke that we needed and deserved.
I would amend that to be, it's not my Luke, and that's why it's my Luke.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So something that I've been saying since the beginning was how I felt halfway through the first viewing, where I turned to my brother and I said, "Man, this movie's really this messing with me." I guess I used a little language in the theater. It was kind of in a quieter moment, so it was kind of funny. And but I love it because I didn't understand what Luke was doing to me. I didn't understand what a lot of the subversion was doing. But I think halfway through the movie, I thought to myself, maybe now I'm going to let go of Star Wars finally because they're going somewhere with Luke that I can't follow. Luke, you're going down a path I can't follow. But by the end of the movie, I realized my brain was working in high gear trying to process it all. And by the end of the movie, I realized, no, that's where I needed to go. Maybe not where I wanted to go.
So there was a point, though, when you were like, oh, maybe this is the time this is our separation now between me and Star Wars. Like, you weren't fully on board with what you were viewing for part of the movie then.
It's all to do with Luke and his one choice of contemplating killing Ben. You know, I was fine with everything, the saber toss, everything about him. But that just him contemplating that seemed at odds with what, they were saying about Luke at the end of Jedi in his nonviolent path, in his choice to save instead of kill. And so that was a fundamental root value of mine in life, too. Like, I've been a nonviolent activist. And so I thought it was really confronting everything I believed about Luke and myself. And it was doing that. And then by the end, I realized it did that for a purpose that I loved.
Yeah. So it was actually in your first viewing that you had the conflict, and then you resolved the conflict all in the 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Because I was like, I think more out of desperation, like my brain is not going to let me not enjoy a Star Wars movie. I have to process this all by the end.
So what was it? So when you left though, because then there's a time. So you watch the movie, you're like, I don't agree with that choice. You finish the movie, you're like, you know what, I'm going to agree with that choice because I have to force myself to like a Star Wars movie. But then you have time to process it afterwards. And then there's a moment there when you could easily have been, because I'm looking at the comments online, I'm looking at everything, I'm saying, well, people hate the choices that Luke made in this movie. You could easily have swayed the other way on this if you wanted to. But you actually looked at it, and we could bring Joseph Campbell into this too, where you found out why this had to be your Luke Skywalker.
Well, my gut instinct and even, maybe my soul reaction was telling me that it was. But I just didn't know why. Because I cried more than I had in any Star Wars movie. And joyful tears, maybe mixed with sadness, but I mean, I think that joy is that. It's not happiness. It's somehow transcending everything in life, even the darkness and sadness, into a state of joyful being. And sometimes that can include crying. So maybe I teared up 5 times in that first viewing, maybe 2 or 3 times every viewing after. I've seen it 5 times. So then I had to sit down and think, why? Why is it making me so joyful? If my thought process was like, you got mind, body, and soul. So my mind was going no, but then the other 2 parts of me were loving it. I think there's only a personal answer to that as to why, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing that a lot because a lot of people hate Luke Skywalker in this, and they just can't get over it. Do you think that this is the Luke that we would have got had George Lucas stayed on board?
Not exactly. I think he would have done some reevaluating of Luke, in terms of the fact that he said, or someone reported, that the ST under his direction was going to be very gray, which it has become. So I would expect that Luke would also have more of a gray element to his character than just the purely good, optimistic person we saw at the end of Jedi. Yeah. Hard to say because I haven't seen what George planned.
I know. Well, I just asked the question because I think everybody's like, eh. And then, but something did come out. We talked about this on the last episode that we did of the podcast, where hints of what he had are starting to leak, and it was Luke isolated at a Jedi temple. Apparently, that was in George Lucas's plans for this. Yeah, so I'm not really sure how far they sway from what he had planned and how, like, I don't know, because at first they're like, he said they threw out all my notes. You're like, oh, okay. But then, you read his initial plan was to have a female-led Jedi that was going to be the lead in this new trilogy. And then they're like, okay, well, we're getting that. And it was supposed to be like a teenager. Kind of are getting that. Like, there's a lot that are following what he did. Now, The Force Awakens, he had that one comment to say about it where he didn't seem too positive on it. But I think it was in his direction, but it took a step back from his direction because Disney, Lucasfilm, Abrams all felt like we need to get everyone back on board. And so to do that, they took, I think, pieces of what he was doing, but then they placed it in a familiar place for us, for the viewer, not for us, but for the general public that needs to be reintroduced to Star Wars and relove it after the negativity that happened for the prequels.
My hope and feeling is that they're keeping the crucial elements of what George planned for the ST. I actually believe that if they're not doing that, there's almost no point, because you have an artist that made 6 movies from a real personal, self-admitted personal point of view, that he would have had something to say with the STs. So my hope and feeling is that they are keeping to those beats. And I would even assume that they are in a few points, like Snoke, and we can get into that later. But and Rey, who was going to be Kira, and Finn. So, and Luke too. And my feeling on George Lucas is that he was such a well-researched person historically and in terms of all these genres, like Tolkien, Campbell, even Frank Herbert's Dune. Herbert, or I don't know how to say his name. Anyway, by the way, I'm drinking a Force Awakens cup right now.
That's awesome.
A cup of coffee. So Frank Herbert's big artistic statement with Dune was really that all revolutions are sown with the seeds of their own destruction. Like, no, we always need a new generation to challenge the older and to make things equal and better and more just. But the roots of where they will go wrong, if you look into history, and Lucas was as much of a student as Herbert, if not more, is that in those revolutions you'll see the seeds of what they'll become that could be bad, like Castro in Cuba. Like, I don't want to get too political, but I mean, they had all the right ideas to help people and make things more just and equal for all the people, but the seeds of maybe some dictator style leadership were in that. You could look back and see their personalities of where they might have their own dark. And I feel like that would have been the same with Luke in George Lucas's mind. So why he would have been exiled would have been I think the general theme would have been Rebels and Jedi. The seeds of where they would go wrong was there from the beginning, and now we're seeing it.
But I think, and that's a great point, because in the prequels, I look at the prequels and I say, well, the Jedi are very, very flawed in the prequels. And I think the prequels are brilliant stories from 1 to 3. The stories in the prequels are fantastic. People, I think, overlook that because of, whether it be the wooden acting or too much CGI went up. But the stories themselves are great. And in those stories, you see Jedi who are far, far from perfect, who are far from the Jedi that, that we thought, like when we envisioned as kids growing up, and we were like, oh, they were Jedi, and they were like this and that. No, they were very, very much flawed, and they were too stubborn to see their own flaws.
Yeah, the arrogance theme. And I think the other theme is the overarching one is that they kind of what's going on in the real world from old religions to new religions, and I don't want to mention any religions, but like a religion of law to religion of love. So in the prequel, they're all about laws. Everything's a rule, and everything is quantified. Like midichlorians are counted. Everything is so rigid and systematic and law based. Where in the Luke and Qui-Gon really starts the path to doing things based on the living force and not law, and he breaks the law. Right? He starts the whole rest of the saga by breaking a Jedi law, by saying he's going to train this child against them. And Luke's the fulfillment of that, and now we're seeing that go into the sequel trilogy as well.
Do you think Luke will appear in 9?
Yeah. I think come on, wait, in his last line is "see you around, kid." Yeah. I mean, if you don't deliver on that, come on. It's more a question of how much we'll see him. I think Force Ghost to Rey would be a given. That's a given. What I love, what I posted about yesterday was in my 5th viewing of The Last Jedi, I noticed that everyone had been talking about how Yoda looks different as a Force Ghost, and it's because he's solid and not see-through.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what did they cheap out on the effect? No, they didn't cheap out. There's one shot where he's standing in one place at first, and then he Force disappears and then reappears in another place. And as he reappears, you see him go from transparent to solid. So like Sam Witwer had said once on RFR was that he noticed, you go from Qui-Gon's voice to Ben's voice to Ben at the beginning of ESB, and then Ben's even a little more corporeal by the end of ESB, and then in Jedi he's much more corporeal. So then in this film we see now Yoda is totally corporeal almost. He's totally solid. He could create force lightning, he can interact with the world, and he can even whack Luke with his stick. So that's telling me something, that there's a progression going on with Force Ghosts. So I want to see is Luke progressed to the next state of Force Ghosts where they can come and interact more with people in the final fight in the final episode of the saga.
But for that to happen, you would have to assume that there would be a time jump in there, because, like you just said, it starts with the voice, and they evolve from there. So if Luke's going to go to that full evolution, then there has to be for him to have the process to make it to that point. No.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk of a time jump to help take care of the Leia thing, which I think it would be great if she just passed away from old age or something, and something peaceful, and then Poe takes over her position. So you have to do that, and then yeah, I never thought of that. Luke would need some time training.
Yeah, which is my one biggest fault of these sequel trilogies now is the training. It almost seems like nobody is trained in anything. Rey can do a Jedi mind trick just because. Broom Kid can pick up a broom just because. And I was talking, I think it was off camera when we were doing the show this week, where I was like, it would have been. I almost would have preferred, and I hate to do this because people do it with the prequels all the time. Where they're like, I rewrote the prequels, and actually, our own Andrew Fantasia did that, so I shouldn't really bash him too much. But the thing that I don't like is like, okay, hindsight is whatever, but it's almost like the Jedi mind trick that Rey does was not my is one of my least favorite parts of The Force Awakens, just because I had to watch a movie of Luke training with Yoda and with Obi-Wan, another one, and it's almost like she just does it. And I almost felt like it almost would have been more powerful even if she was in there being tortured by a stormtrooper or whatnot. And then because the Force is so powerful with her, she just kind of like lets out a scream and things just crumple up around her. And because she doesn't understand what she has. And that's my thing.
Fair criticism.
Yeah, and it's a small part of the movie, and it's like I can get over it because I love Star Wars. I get over it, but I do miss the training parts that we saw. I was saying I don't want to see a universe now of superhero like people because of the Force. I love the Jedi, but let's grow to that and let's show the training. And I love that Rey has the books now, because if there's a time jump, she could have spent that time jump reading those books, and that for me is fine. I'm fine with that. I don't have to see the training. I just want to know that it existed at some point in time.
Right. I think the two things with Rey criticisms on that level were, how was she so good with the lightsaber? Irrelevant.
Yeah, I don't care.
She had been defending herself with that staff all her life, and she could have had anyone to learn a martial art from on Jakku and have a whole life of training to be amazing.
We saw it at the beginning.
She could be a master just on her own. We saw that at the beginning.
Yeah, with the stormtrooper, she takes them out with her staff. That's everything. Yeah.
Add a little bit of Force awakening in her with the saber, and of course she's going to be badass with that thing. The Jedi mind trick, I have the same feeling. That's the only thing I could criticize, but at the same time, just to enjoy the movie in that part, I do sort of explain it away that she witnessed Kylo doing a mind trick on her. And then learned on a fast track.
Yeah, that's
how to do that herself. And if the theme is the Force balancing powers, taking it, then the Force is maybe balancing that within her. So it's like I explain it away, but I understand that was pushing it.
Yeah, no, but I think that's what they're going for. They're like, it was also they needed to get her out of that situation.
Yeah,
everyone loves a mind trick. Do it. But those are. I don't think they said the lightsaber does not bother me. It's just that mind trick scene is the one where I'm like, it's like so close. Yeah. But like I said, I can get over that because of Star Wars, love Star Wars, and progression. You need to sometimes get over it. I compare it to, I hate to compare it to it, but the Justice League movie, when I don't know if you've seen it, but Superman, spoiler, comes back. And the way he comes back sucks. I'm sorry. I'm like, okay, I have to get over this. Otherwise, the whole movie will be terrible. I'm not going to say if it's terrible or not. You can judge for yourself. But, there are moments in some movies where you just have to get over that one thing. And for me, it's the Rey thing. That's her biggest flaw for me is not even her flaw. It's the storytelling more than her. It's like, just give me like her training with Luke. I kind of wish there was a little bit more. That's a personal gripe, I think, though. I think for what we got 2.5 hours. We obviously did not need any more. But I personally like that stuff. I guess that
movie could exist as a 3.5 hour Lord of the Rings style movie. I have a feeling a lot of that extra stuff on that level is great because there was the third lesson too, right?
Yeah.
And then she was going to save the caretakers. So
I love the caretakers.
Deleted scenes. Me too. They're so Star Wars. They're so Muppets or Jim Henson or something classic from my childhood. I can't quite pinpoint it yet.
I was saying on the review I did with Brock right after we saw it, we did it like literally like 20 minutes after we saw them. We're like, let's go on a review. So you miss things and you forget things. But the one things I did bring up was Rian Johnson totally understood creatures, like Star Wars creatures.
The design of the whole movie, the creatures, everything. Yeah, even Paul Bateman was saying that, and he's the most critical of anyone. And he knows what he's talking about,
Yeah.
So he loved it visually. It's just, the creatures.
Yeah, I was like, because, like, I always bring up a C2B5, who was the black R2D2 from Rogue One that didn't even make it in the film, but they sold toys and all this stuff. And I can always compare it to like that, where you're like, and Pow, Pow, I was so excited to see Pow in Rogue One, who's like, just kind of like, hey, Pow, go do this. Like, it's almost like I love Rogue One to death, but like they didn't really get that. Force Awakens, there's a couple, but like this one was like the creatures are back. Like this is it's a Return of the Jedi level of creatures where you're like, there are so many awesome. I forgot about it, I'm like, I want to, but yeah, and it's not just background. Like the Voltex have a point, the Porgs have a point, the Fathiers, they have a point. Like everything has a purpose in this universe in Rian Johnson's movie, and that. I think he totally hit the nail on the head on that.
Yeah, and I was reading pieces by the designers like Neil Scanlon, and the way that they combined practical and CGI was great too, because with the Faviers, you obviously have to have them running CGI. But they had a philosophy that if you introduce the character as a when you first see the head in the stable, if you introduce it on a practical level, then we'll feel like it's a real animal and we'll have more of an emotional attachment to it. So they did that with the Crystal Foxes, the Vulptexes as well. And you got to love that there's some Dave Filoni essence in those, in the way they were guides. Sort of reminds me of the way the wolves were guides in Rebels Season 4. There's Clone Wars and PT all over this movie, as well as it seems to combine everything great about Star Wars, every movie, every TV show. Yeah,
exactly. Like Rian Johnson had a complete love and understanding of the property. Because one thing we should talk about here is we just did the video and I changed the title. I had to change the title to, because we mentioned it briefly. Did Rian Johnson give the middle finger to Force Awakens and Star Wars? No, we can say no. But this is the thing that's going around, because they're like, well, this happened, and then Rian Johnson's like, no, I'll strike you down, and this happened, no, I'll strike it down. And from what I saw was he was not saying screw you to the Force Awakens. This is where the Force Awakens was leading, and not everything has to drag into the third movie, and not everything has to go the way you think.
Yeah, and I still think some things are going to drag into the third movie.
Oh, yes.
I mean, J.J. Abrams said Episode 9 is going to tie up all 9 movies. You can't have that by getting rid of everything before it. Like, man, I still think Snoke is Plagueis and the real villain behind all 6 movies. I think that's why he's so rich. I think he's behind the banks and the PT. I think he owns all the corporate companies that are selling to both sides of the war. So I still think that's going to be a theme brought to 6. That could be nuts. I think it was at least set up that he could be Plagueis based on comments from Rian Johnson where he mentioned him. And
he mentioned Plagueis.
Yeah, in an interview, he said, well, why didn't you explain him? And then Rian Johnson said, well, I could have just said he was Plagueis. Not that he is Plagueis. But I think, like, if they go there is another question. Were they intending to possibly go there, that Snoke is Plagueis? Yes. I would bet money on that, with the John Williams music echoing the Plagueis music from Revenge of the Sith when Palpatine's explaining him to Anakin. And by the way, they still use that Plagueis music in this movie combined with the Emperor's music. So I still think Snoke is somehow, and Rian Johnson in the latest episode of the Director's Cut podcast was asked about that. He said, no, it's not about cutting everything down. He said, actually, it's about, if you try to burn everything down, it's going to follow you even harder into the future.
Yeah. Like
you try to run away from home as a kid, and if you actually do, that decision's going to follow you forever.
Yeah.
So it's so subversive that way. It's actually the opposite of burning everything down in Star Wars, and we're going to see that by 9, I think.
I completely agree, and I think let's go into this Snoke thing, because one of the guys on our channel, Rob McDonald, absolutely hates what happened with Snoke in this movie. When it happened, so right before I saw the movie, I was like, Luke's gonna die, Snoke's gonna die, Kylo's gonna ask Rey to join him. That was like the night before. I was like, oh God,
smart.
It was weird. It was a weird, and I told a couple people so that some people could back me up.
Okay, all right. No,
and if it was wrong, I was wrong. But I didn't know how it was going to happen. But when that Snoke scene was coming, I'm like, oh my God, they're actually going to go through with Snoke. And I said on the podcast the week before, I said, I hope Snoke. I don't think Snoke. I said this on the show. I said I do not think Snoke will die on that show. But I said I hope if he does, I want Kylo just to kill him and become the big bad. And I was so happy when that happened. But then it's Star Wars, and they did cut to Snoke later on to show that he's not moving, that he is in fact Gonzo.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is Star Wars. That doesn't mean anything. I love your idea that he could be the one running the banks and all of that, and he could be coming back.
Yeah, when I think about any idea that could tie all six together, that's the only one. Yeah. Like, this is the real villain behind all the villains, who played Palpatine, played everyone. Now, if he died, like, if he is Plagueis, and I just want to put it out there, everyone, you don't have to make fun of me, because obviously he might not be Plagueis, and I realize that. But if he is Plagueis, you'd have to see him die and come back to drive that point home, that this is someone who learned how to cheat death.
Yeah. And
so maybe if it is him, you have to see what we just saw, And
he could have, and what is happening in that scene, he is saying out loud. Yeah. To everyone.
He's saying this was
yeah, and then he says he's going to strike down. Yeah, and he's like, you're going to strike down your true villain or whatever, his threat. So, and then he kills Snoke. And then once he kills Snoke, Kylo can be at the top. He can be the new supreme leader, and then Snoke can do what he did for, like you said, the last 6 movies, and just watch and observe and take over and still being the puppet master from somewhere. I mean, that's possible, but at the same time, he might also just be dead.
But then you have to answer the question, well, why would he let himself die there? And an answer popped up immediately in the movie to me. If everyone dies when they do force projections, that Snoke was doing the most of it, the whole movie. It must have really taken a toll on him. He'd be like, I'm already decayed anyway. Now I'm doing these force projections, taking a toll. It's time for a new body. And like, as much as that scene, if he is Plagueis, as much as that scene looks like it's burning everything in the past down, no, that's exactly the way it's meant to be.
Yeah.
Your master, if you're a Sith or a dark side user like that, then your master is supposed to be your enemy. Like, it's all actually pretty status quo. That scene.
Exactly.
That scene is so brilliant because it's either completely revolutionary or completely status quo. Such great writing.
I that's my favorite scene in the movie. I love the Praetorian Guards, and I love everything that's from the beginning to the end of it. I love the way it looked, and it was just. But people have a problem with it. And people want more Snoke. And my one thing with Snoke that I won't go into because I did it on the last show was I just feel like when people compare Snoke to Palpatine, how you didn't need to know the Emperor's backstory in the original trilogy, comparing that to how you don't need to know Snoke's, I just think the biggest difference is Luke and Leia both know who Snoke is and tell that that Snoke is the reason Ben Solo turned. They both kind of have that moment, whereas in the original trilogy, the reason it's not even Anakin, it's Darth Vader, we're told, was corrupted, but seduced by the dark side. And when you say dark side versus, they never say Emperor. They never tell us that it was Palpatine that seduced him. So that to me is the biggest difference, and that's why, even if he's not, if Snoke could still be just Snoke, he doesn't have to be Plagueis. He could be a Plagueis type, let's just say, for argument's sake, so we don't get the comments going down. But that is the biggest difference.
Bring him on. Suck on my Snoke theory. Hashtag.
But there needs to be something to tell us who Snoke is. For even for that scene to be even more than it is, we'll need to know. We'll be getting that 9. Oh, yeah. That's what I think too, and that's why I don't have a problem with that right now. Yeah. I will have a problem when 9 comes and they're like, no, they don't even mention him. Right. It's just if that were to happen, then it'd be like, there's a gap there.
But if they don't have anything left open to conclude a 9, what would even be the point of the movie? So
that's where people's heads are at right now.
It's just good writing for the middle chapter. Empire got the same sort of, people were really upset about things being unresolved, and Vader saying he's Luke's father way back then. So it's really the same thing. That's just good. these people are professional storytellers. They know how to tell stories more, maybe even than they know how to, Star Wars. So yeah, I kind of trust that they know what they're doing with that.
Yeah, so I was saying for months before I said, I feel like this is gonna be, it's not gonna be Empire Strikes Back, it's gonna be reverse Empire Strikes Back, and it kind of has that feeling of reverse Empire Strikes Back, where they're separate at the beginning and together at the end. The big Hoth is crate, stuff like that. But the biggest reverse of it all, even if you argue against it being a reverse, the biggest reverse of it all is that at the end of Empire Strikes Back, we know what has to happen in Return of the Jedi. They have to go save Han. That's it. In this one, we don't know. What is 9 now? 9 could start 10 years down the road, 100 years down the road, a minute down the road. 9 is open to anything, whereas Return of the Jedi has to resolve the Han situation.
Well, I think you finally have to resolve the Empire and the Rebellion. Like that, there can't be another movie about that. This has to be 9, this has to be the last on that theme. That, and then it really has to show the Jedi. Luke says, I will not be the last Jedi. So it can't be just Rey. Hopefully she's going to be training Broom Boy and starting a new academy. That's
my dream, is this starts, I don't know, a few years later, and she's got a bunch of younglings, Padawan. And I'm just like, yeah, because I again, like a few months ago, we talked about on our show where we were like, wouldn't it be kind of cool if 9 ended with a giant Lord of the Rings style battle where you have dark and light coming head to head? Like, how awesome would that? We've never got that in a movie. Yeah. So that would be so awesome to see. And right now they've set it up. I don't know if they're going to do it or not, but they've set it up to a point where they totally could do that if they wanted.
Yeah, and at the end of Lord of the Rings, you basically have two celestial, almost spiritual beings at battle with each other too. Not directly, but Gandalf is the counter to Sauron. Gandalf is sort of returned from dead and not totally human. He's like an angel in human form. So there's your Luke, and then Sauron would be hopefully the Plagueis in some form, So yeah, that kind of spiritual battle. I think, if anything's going to wrap up all 9 movies, I want to see that spiritual battle along with big armies, the ground battle, the air battle. Yeah, like just have all those different, because you've always had the ground and the air and then the force battle, but really just take those to the extreme.
Yeah, and I can't think of someone better than J.J. Abrams to do something like that, because it would just be over the top fun in a lot of ways. Something like that.
Yeah, and he started, I think some people criticize how he didn't have all the answers in Force Awakens, and personally, as a creator, I've never worked like that. Like whether I'm doing writing a song or an album or a painting, I don't want to know the end of the painting, because I think by not having your preconceived notion in your brain already, you have freedom to let other creative areas flow, and you have freedom to find things that you didn't plan. And that's what's great about the ST, that by not having the plan and saying sort of, I think I know where it's going to Rian Johnson, then Rian Johnson to JJ now, it sort of leaves them open to find creative solutions that are not predictable. And I love that. I especially love that about Luke in this. I always thought that Luke would grow up to be sort of the perfect Jedi master. And then I realized, as my favorite hero as a kid, I kind of wanted to grow up to be a perfect, Jedi myself. And I guess that's a metaphor for just as a musician or whatever, like my, craft and skill, like that whole Jedi thing about trying to master something. But the truth is, at 42 years old, I've had traumas, physical traumas from things that have affected me. I've had depression. I've had to work through that over 10 years. I've had my own failures, like, ones that really, just made you want to give up. And then I realized, oh my God, this Luke is way closer to who I actually became. That's really smart of them. Like, I didn't become the Luke I thought I would as a kid. And then I happened to be reading Joseph Campbell, Hero with 1,000 Faces at the same time. And he was talking about how Freud kind of looked at maybe the psychoanalysis and hero's journey stuff from the point of view of a child and how it affects their early life, all this stuff. And then Campbell was saying that Carl Jung focused a lot on the hero's journey of later life, from adulthood to death. So it's sort of like, in a weird way, the OT is sort of Freudian for Luke, and then the ST is more Carl Jung. His hero's journey, he refuses the call, in a sense, to go on his journey into the final stage of death, and what he has to do that with grace, with purpose, with peace. So we get to see that. And I think as a 42-year-old, that helps me sort of mentally, as myth is supposed to do. It's supposed to help us get through the phases of our life. That's what Campbell said. That's what Star Wars is. Star Wars needs to be more myth before it's Star Wars. And I realized, God, this thing is going to help me for the next couple of decades. Just, to make that transition into older age and then death. Sure, it sounds ridiculous and kind of dramatic of me to say that, but that's what it's doing.
Yeah. Well, that's, we talked about this again this week, where Star Wars is, part of the thing with fans hating on Star Wars is because Star Wars isn't just a movie anymore. It is a way of life in a lot of ways, and it helps people cope with things, and you base your life on things, and you see it from a different perspective. And so, in that perspective, for a lot of people, the films can never live up to that, because it's more than what they saw. It's what they remember, and it's the feelings that it imposes on you as you watch it.
Yeah, I think this movie purposefully plays with your feelings that you had, but not to play with them with any malicious or cynical intent. Like, I think it plays with them in a way to push your heart and soul and mind further into where it needs to go. Everything about Luke now, after seeing it the fifth time, I like every single second. I hope he wins an Oscar, because his acting, he tears me up a few times. When he winks at 3PO, when he talks to Leia, when he first appears, on Crate, it's like that guy just tears me up. Even his first, I don't understand why people had a problem with him tossing a saber at the beginning. I'm having a really hard time trying to figure out why. Like, I understand the Ben thing, but I don't get why people are against that. And maybe you could help me understand that. I like it because no matter who the older master is, they say when you get older, your sense of humor stops caring.
Yeah.
The older you get, the more you don't care about what people think. And so Luke's sort of like, he's just gotten to that point where, I don't care. And I don't care about showing that I don't care. Because that's what an older person would do. And wise old masters always have that crazy side. Like Yoda had that crazy side.
Yeah. I think we did a show like a week after we saw it. I think it's episode 73 or 74 for people who want to go back and check it out. It's our Christmas episode. So there's Christmas lights on the graphic if you want to see it. And so we try to dissect why people kind of like are bashing this movie. And
I may have seen that. I've watched a bunch of yours. So I'll have to go back. And what I said was,
you hand it off to Luke, and I'm just trying to understand other people's minds of this. So this isn't necessarily my view on it, but you wait an entire movie for Luke after not seeing him for 30 years and going through the prequels, and then people be like, I want Luke. Luke's finally back at the end of the movie, doesn't say anything, and he looks at this thing, and there's an emotion on his face. And then we get this movie, and the first time we see Luke, we're like, here it is. This is the payoff from what we waited 2 years for. We waited 2 years for this. As he hands a lightsaber, and he takes it, and he looks at it, and I said this in the video, so I'm going to say it again, and then I'm going to expand on it, though. He tosses it over his shoulder, and I said in the video, very Animaniacs-like. Like, it's almost like very goofy. Now, one of our viewers, Gizmo, who saw it, hated the movie the first time, actually really liked it the second time, and he said the second time he saw it, he didn't find it very goofy, the toss. But I'm going to stick with my guns on that part of this argument where he tosses it. And once he tosses it over his shoulder, instead of like throwing it down and just tossing it to the side, it's over his shoulder. And when he does that, I think everything you had for the last 30 years, 2+ years of Luke is now like what the F has happened? That's not hashtag not my Luke right off the bat. And then what happens from that moment is every time Luke is on screen, because the next thing he does, he like uses that giant pole to like go from one end to the other, and then he milks the cow, and all of a sudden you're like your whole perception of Luke has now shifted to I don't know what I'm seeing anymore, because you watch 3 movies of the wholesome, wholehearted Luke Skywalker, and now it's just right off the bat is like punch you in the face. This is what you're getting, and you're just, and I just think as a lot of viewers are just not prepared for that, and that's why I also think a lot of this movie's making a ton of money, because I think a lot of average moviegoers that aren't diehard Star Wars fans, they don't have that baggage with them. And I think it's the baggage of 3 movies of Luke Skywalker, 30 years of waiting for Luke Skywalker, sitting through 3 prequels where you were like, I wish this was Luke Skywalker. Not me personally, but other people. And then 2 years after being teased about Luke Skywalker, you get, exactly what you said, someone whose humor is obviously elevated, because he's not funny in the original movies. So now all of a sudden we have this Luke that you're not mentally prepared for. And also I think that plays into why people love this movie the more they see it, because you get used to it and you start accepting this Luke Skywalker. But the first time you see it, he tosses it, and it's, who saw that coming? Who saw it?
So you've answered the question really well for me. Thanks. That makes sense. So it's not that it's not well acted or not well written. It's more just it's literally everything that people hoped for is just being tossed over the shoulder. So it's not, because when you watch, after seeing it 5 times, it's really well acted. Like he doesn't he doesn't get goofy. He still maintains that really dire, serious look on his face as he walks off. He's just more like, F this, man. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
see, I think if he would have just like handed it back or threw it to the side, mentally you would have been like, oh, he does not want any part of that. But because it's over the shoulder, I think it gets a chuckle when it gets played, and I think that is what really throws people off.
But it's also, it needs to be over the shoulder metaphorically, like weight on his shoulders, the stuff that's in the past. I think that's really the only way for him to throw it.
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing against it. It's just to answer your question.
Oh,
that's
yeah,
what
I
think.
know you're not.
I could be completely wrong, but that's what, because when I watched the movie the first night in the theater, which I don't know if people watching will know, but I had the strangest experience our opening night. You went to a really great theater. We did not. We went to.
I'm such a snob that way.
Well, we considered it, but we went to the fan event still, 6 p.m. fan event, all like excited, and it was like nobody cared that there was. Like everybody there did not seem to care that they were watching Star Wars. There was no clapping. There was clapping once in the entire movie, and that's when BB-8 was in the ATST. It was like 2 people clapped. It was, I'm not joking. Like when we saw, I think Rogue One and Force Awakens, the minute Star Wars hits the screen, and as it happened, Erin looked at me. She goes, "Here comes the clapping," and nothing happened. And Rob was beside me like this, and he stopped because no one reacted. And then Aaron's like, "Why isn't anyone clapping?" I'm like, "I don't know what's going on. I'm just gonna eat my popcorn and move on." And it was the most surreal thing. But as I watched it, I could see people's reactions to things. And the first instance of Luke, people were chuckling or like shifting in their seat like uncomfortably, and that, for better or worse, prepares you for what you're going to get from this Luke Skywalker.
Right. I think it's for better, obviously, because I've read some articles that have been coming at it from professional, psychoanalysts, and people who deal with depression. I've seen a lot of blogs on this where they love this Luke because, okay, let's look at this. The guy was separated from his parents at birth, never knew them. He saw his adoptive parents burned to death. Then he had his arm cut off, and after his arm cut off, the Hitler of the galaxy tells him he's his father. And then he gets shocked by lightning, to the point of almost dying, and then he sees his father die. Like, he would be traumatized. He just would, and at some level, deeper or lighter, and he would be dealing with depression. People who are traumatized by violence have their own violent thoughts or outbursts. So that, to me, shows like the sort of madness that's going on with him, and when dealing with young Ben and seeing that Ben is going to do horrible things to people that were done to him and the people he's already seen in life. So he's got a lot going on in him in that scene. He also, sorry, wait, there was one more thing. The psychoanalytical, the humor. After having been through all that, people who have been through a lot develop a really good sense of humor to deal with it. And to me, that was Luke in this movie. Like, it was all, I don't have a problem with any of the jokes in this movie. I think they're all good. I think they're not all hilarious, but they're all not awkward. They're all well acted. They're all light. You know what? I actually pretty much think this movie's perfect at this point after seeing it 5 times.
And I'm going to respond Chrome Dome.
You don't like that? See, to me, sometimes Star Wars imperfections are still part of the perfection of it. Like Laser Brain to me isn't much different than Chrome Dome.
No, you're right, and it's on the level of it's very close to a Jar Jar moment. The Chrome Dome. No, it is what it is. It doesn't. I don't really care. But
that, like my older brother, I took him to see because he's always kind of liked Star Wars. He loved Han, but he's a sports guy. He's a professional disc golfer. But I took him as part of his Christmas present to see the premiere, and he'd never seen Laser IMAX 3D too. So,
oh, nice.
That movie blew him away on a story level, on a technical level, and he loved the. I have to tell people, if you have a chance to see this movie in Laser IMAX 3D, you don't get any of the double lines, that you get from the stereoscopic image. Blacks are true black because laser, where it doesn't hit the screen, it's deep black. It takes care of all movement, color. I've taken a few people to see that Laser IMAX 3D now, and they're like, wow, yeah, I never really understood why you love 3D so much, but it's just perfect. And my brother loved the movie. He loved Luke. He just felt like he's 6 years older than me too, so he just felt like there was a realism to the movie that he hadn't yet seen in a Star Wars film that he really connected to from his wiser point of view now in life.
That's interesting. That's a good point. People should think about that, man. Because Star Wars needs to grow.
And he's not a geek out kind of guy. We needed to go to the Horseshoe Tavern after, legendary Horseshoe Tavern in Toronto. He needed to have a beer and sit down and talk about the film. And this is my brother, usually he's talking about hockey and sports, and it was that's how profound this movie had an effect on someone who isn't even a Star Wars fan. It's
funny because I have a few friends that don't really care about Star Wars, and they're like, I need to talk about this. We need to talk about this movie. And, they would be like, I gave it a 6 out of... And they'd be like, I gave it a 6 out of 10, but we need to talk about it. I'm like,
right. So no matter what you want to rate it, you can love it or hate it, but this movie's powerful. Yeah. 11 out of 10 powerful, whatever your opinion is.
It's so true. On that note, let's wrap this up. Din, where can everybody find you at?
Oh, I just wanted to say one thing about Luke before we wrap it up. Because where I was going was that, and I think it's really important to repeat this, that he chose a nonviolent path in Jedi. I've done activism and training with someone who was James Loney, who you can look him up, captivity, 118 days in captivity in Iraq. He was abducted by terrorists. And in a training session, I've done some nonviolent stuff with Jedi, and one training session we had, and he's certified and professional and everything, was that a nonviolent person has to acknowledge the violence within themselves to be able to transcend it. And that was, that's similar to what Yoda is saying in the Yoda arc. He doesn't think he has a dark side, but he has to admit it. And I think what this movie shows is that Luke, no matter how old you are in life, that darkness is still going to pop up, that violence within you, whatever it is. And you're going to have to look at it if you want to transcend it. And I think that's what the Luke and Ben scene does. He looks at it, he's ashamed of it. And that just makes a very Campbellian ending where he's the image of the Buddha on the immovable spot was the God, love, and death with the massive army trying to move the Buddha and to tempt him with things and to destroy him with the army. And the Buddha doesn't move. All he does is touch the ground. And I just think that that's what Luke became at this end of the movie. And I'm suggesting that Rian Johnson did that purposefully, because even the real Luke, where he is, he's cross-legged, sitting like the Buddha. And his feet, where he's projected onto Crate, never leave the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And all he does is brush the ground off his one hand movement. So I think, and then he's sort of at the tree of life like Buddha the whole movie, the Jedi tree. So I just think that for me, like, I really want to end on saying I think this perfectly evokes like global archetypes of mythology, like as Joseph Campbell always intended. And I think Rian Johnson really nailed that with this film. And he's also Jesus in a way, because the tree of life, the cross is the wooden tree. And he's sacrifices himself, but then he's also like Buddha and immovable. So it's great. It's like Luke becomes this perfect mix of Western and Eastern God type figures by the end of the movie.
Yeah, and no one can tell me that Rian Johnson didn't think of any of that when he was going into it, from the religion to Joseph Campbell stuff. He respects all of it, and that's where Star Wars comes from. Okay, on that note.
Thank you for letting me wrap that. That was a long wrap.
No problem. That's what this whole thing has been about. So it's good to end it on that. Where can everybody find you?
First of all, I'd like to say that I love your R2 too.
Oh, thank you.
They can find the hashtag is @105music, and that's a 110 f105music.com is our website, and then Twitter, Instagram, Facebook /f105music.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for joining me here. You can find me at Petsafina as always. But then thank you so much for having this conversation with us. Can't wait to talk more Last Jedi with you.
Thanks, James. I really needed that.
All right. Have a good one. And as always, guys, may the force of others be with you.
Hey, scumbags. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.